supreme wisdom. Student enrollment, that's what the class of God students enrolling. Supreme wisdom, I study it hard. The study of myself is the study of God. Supreme wisdom, write your letter, get your X. Supreme wisdom, that's what you'll be getting next. Supreme wisdom, some call it the lessons, but I call it life, actual facts, no guessing.
So here we are at week 4 of this iteration of the foundation class, and our topic is history is best qualified to reward our research. And so before I go any further, I kind of want to clear up some things, not saying that anybody did anything, but I'm looking for a little bit of feedback, okay?
Yeah.
Because with my background being in education, my teaching style as a teacher, I don't like a quiet class, you know, because I feel like if I'm just sitting up here talking and I can't get you to tell me what I just told you, I feel like I'm not, I really haven't achieved the goal, right? So, and I just want to clarify that is my background. I am a teacher by training, so I'm not a historian, believe it or not. Even though we're going over this long list of historical facts and things like this, I am not saying that I am the foremost expert of this information. And so what I would challenge you all to do is anything that I say up here, please go and do your research on your own. Because again, even with my background, I know that, you know, you want to look at primary sources and things like this, but at the end of the day, you know, I do, this is not my life. So when I take this time to put together these presentations, you know, that takes some time out of what I do during my everyday life. And so I don't get paid to do this. So I try to use my time as best as I can to put together something, you know, that'll get the point across. And with that being said, as an educator, it's my job to facilitate your education or learning. So it's not my job for my training to, research things, even though I do have to do a little bit of research, but really where I shine is making the information clear to you and pertinent to you, okay? So with that being said, I want to ask you all, what have you been getting out of this information? And do you find this information that I'm going over with you all relevant? Because if it's really not relevant to you, you know, no matter how interesting the information might be, if it's not relevant to you, there's really no need to go further, right? That would be your hope. When you take the time out of your schedule to attend these classes, these meetings, there'll be something that you as an individual are getting out of it. Being that we are week 4, usually how we've been doing it, everybody does a 4-week stretch, but for the foreseeable future, I don't think any other believer is going to come up and do anything. And also there's more to the story, as they say. But I want to know from you all, are you getting anything out of this?
Okay. I was enlightened for the information that you imparted about Islam and how Islam became in disarray as it is now today. I was informed or enlightened by the information that you give me about the happening in the Muslim community, as far as the Ottoman Empire is concerned. But I didn't know that they wasn't Arab.
Oh, okay. Praise be to God. Yes, sir.
The Ottoman Empire.
Right.
But I thought all of them was Arabic.
Right. And that is a common misconception. Because in that certain part of the world, being that you know, the peoples of that area, they intermingle and mix, so does their cultural language. So there might be a lot of, you know, language, that's been borrowed from other cultures and languages, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
So that is a common misconception that Turks are Arabs.
Yeah.
Same thing like with Indians and Arabs, you know, that, you know, being post 9/11 in America, you know, people on high alert for people who fit a certain physical description.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people get Sikhs and Muslims or Arabs specifically confused.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the Sikhs are the Indians, and they're not Arab, they're not Muslim
No.
by faith tradition. But you know, they wear the turban, and you know, we grew up watching Aladdin, where you have the Sultan, as they say on there, the Sultan, who wears this big, you know, headdress and things. So we're like, you know, that, you know, those are the same people.
Yeah.
So that is a common misconception, you know, that the Arabs are the Indians or the Pakistanis or the Ottomans or the, you know, the different ethnic groups that exist.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta read.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, sir. Brother Thomas?
Yes, throughout my time in class, I have never been a student that just sat down and didn't participate or didn't challenge the teacher or the information, right or wrong. Because bottom line is that I'm here or there to learn. And most teachers, as you would say, you know, they love feedback. They love seeing you think and you absorb this information. I had commented that this class was a good class and that there need to be other people here other than myself, because I'm kind of very familiar with the information. But a follow-up or prerequisite to this class is the history of Islam, because that would, you know, there's a lot of gaps in terms of some of us not understanding how Islam started in that part of the world, and especially the life and teachings of Prophet Muhammad. May peace and blessings be upon him. Some of us don't know that there's an emphasis in Islam on learning, and we are required to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And one of the Prophet's sayings was that if they had knowledge in China, then you should go to China and get that particular knowledge. So it's incumbent on a Muslim to be knowledgeable, to study, and to constantly learn.
Yeah.
And this class teaches a history of what's going on now, because at this stage of the course, you can kind of like put together what's happening now, and you can take a little step back and see where it all kind of came from.
Yeah.
But at the same token, some of us don't have an understanding of Islam. I had to tell a brother the other day that in Islam, according to the Qur'an, we are admonished to compete with each other in all that is right. We're supposed to challenge and compete in that. And a brother or sister should never be mad or upset at a brother or a sister who's competing in righteous deeds, righteous competition. Because that's what we are put in the earth for. We are constantly struggling and striving to make ourselves pleasing to God, to Allah. And the way to do that is to constantly demonstrate to Allah that we have absorbed this material and that we know what He has been trying to teach us.
Yes.
So this is a very good class. I was told that all the classes are good, but
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't believe, my retort to that would have been, if I could have said anything, some classes I can't go to, because I can't go to MGT class, so I can't say
That
anything.
is true.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have input and other points of view,
Right.
other than your own, because sometimes people don't realize, that that's what makes the world go round. It's the spices of life that makes the
Come
world
on
go
now, and
round.
teach you, and teach you.
And like I said, I can't speak on the MGT class, because I've never been.
Right.
And rightfully so, I'm kind of excluded from that class. And not just that class, I know some other classes too. But I was just speaking in general, in terms of a student attending one of the classes that I thought was a good class. And maybe some people took it as though I was trying to put down all the other classes, but that's not the case. You gonna always have, you go get a child, they always have one class they like more.
Right, right.
You
We
know,
all
most
have
of the
a-
black people used to say PE. You know, that's my favorite class, PE.
Right.
Or lunchtime, you know?
Mhm.
But we always have a class that we, particularly like. And I just commented on how I thought this class was so informative and so good in terms of understanding, what this Caucasian has been doing
Right.
and is doing. So, in a way, I started not to attend the class because a lot of this I already know, but there's always a thing in Islam that we gotta constantly go through what they call repetition, because that's what keeps us young,
Right.
and that's what keeps us knowledgeable, and that's what keeps us moving ahead, because we gotta constantly go over the material.
Yes, sir.
And some of us, as much as we go over the Qur'an, we don't even remember that. But as I said, that's the whole purpose of the Qur'an anyway, because the Qur'an constantly repeats itself. If you go to one chapter and you say, man, I read that verse somewhere else.
Right. Right.
And after a while, you get to see that these verses keep coming back. But
Right.
inshallah, there's a reason for that.
Right. Things keep repeating as well. Sister Demoiselle, because I know she has plans. She's a little busy, so she's actually gonna be doing something else sometime. But I tried to get you while you were still here. Okay, but praise be to Allah. I'm very glad that we are getting something from the class. And when I say we, I really mean we, because this is not information that I knew offhand. At the time that I had begun the class. So even going through compiling the information and trying to streamline it to get someone else to understand, the understanding has become more clear to myself as well. So I'm definitely thankful for that. But again, one thing I have to mention is that we will begin to start posting our videos from this Wednesday's foundation class. We will start posting again on YouTube. So even if the class itself might be sparsely populated, the message will still be able to get out. Because at one point we kind of ceased posting them on the internet because of an order that had come down, but we got a chance to clear up, the situation, and it was kind of a misunderstood order. So once we got clarity on it, now we're going to be back to posting the videos online. So the information we go on here, not only can other people who, might not have attended physically come, but, we can always view them again. So anything that we missed that day, we can go back and watch it and get the information. And also, we have a website for Muhammad 65. And so we will be posting videos on there as well as the PowerPoints. So if you're going to skip all the talking, just get to the information, you can get the PowerPoints as well. So that'll be available.
And once again, I would hope that you would consider in the future maybe doing a class on the life of Prophet Muhammad or Islam.
Would you like to do that?
No.
Okay, I get what you're saying. You're saying you need to go learn.
Huh?
Got it. I said you saying that I need to go learn. Gotcha.
No, that's not, I'm saying
I was
you've
done.
done such an excellent job that, perhaps in a follow-up, or if you were gonna do something extra, you might consider, I said consider that, not,
Yes.
now for myself, teaching that, particular course, I do it all the time and I have done it, but I mean, if there's a need, I would do it, but.
This is not my name, believe it or not, you can check anyone on this roster, my name is not on it.
No.
This is not mine, and I'm just, here, because of you all.
Practice makes perfect.
And so, that's really a segue to, the last thing I wanna go before we get into it is that, again, a part of the reason behind why I chose to take up this subject
Yeah,
is
good
because
question.
I, noticed something, and again, it came from, get to the point, but after watching the Time of What Must Be Done lecture series, the entire 58-week series, I was listening to the minister and what he said in 2013, and it's more relevant today than it was in 2013. Not saying it wasn't relevant then, but it's just more relevant now. And so I asked myself the question, why had we not moved out on the imperatives that he gave us as a nation within the structure of the Nation of Islam and the original people as a whole? Why hadn't we moved out on his instructions? And this past weekend, at the Church of Scientology, there was a seminar on Repair the Black Family, but Sister Deborah spoke on education, and she broke down some things that were interesting to me. And she was breaking down how a technology that they have is called study tech, but she explained how sometimes people have a hard time learning, one, because they have misunderstood words. And so applying that to what I'm saying is that I was like, maybe, or that the reason people are not understanding the Honorable Minister Farrakhan is because they don't understand the words that he's saying, or specifically what I'm saying is that we don't understand the names, these places that he's describing. We don't understand the cultures and the civilizations of the place he's describing. We don't understand the timeline. It's the same principle that the information that he's talking about, we lack mass. We can't connect it mentally with anything. So when the minister starts talking about Iran and the geopolitics going on over there, and he mentions Syria and all these places, most people in America can't point that out on a map.
True.
So maybe, by going there and showing people, pointing out where this place is on the map and explaining, the different scenarios and situations that he's trying to explain, maybe that'll help people hear him and follow his commands, right? And then another thing that she mentioned about learning that's a barrier to learning is what she called too steep of a gradient. First there's a skip gradient. When a skip gradient is like you're trying to go up a set of stairs, and you know how it is with going upstairs, there's one stair after another, after another, after another. Yeah. And so try going up the stairs with the middle peg missing. But you have to make it upstairs, but the whole middle section of the staircase is missing. So you only have one step where you are and another step all the way at the top. Yeah. How are you going to be able to get up the stairs if the next step isn't there for you to step on? And so, again, with information that he's going on, he's discussing really complex, high-level situations that the average person doesn't even have a step to step on, right? So he's all the way at the highest step, and some of us hadn't even taken the first step to get to where he's at. So a part of this lecture series is trying to catch us up, bring us, starting back somewhere at the point in the past, then catch us up and bring us up to the modern time and to the present time. Yes, sir.
Man, the group of people that you might be talking about in the African American community is what I would perceive to be as the educated elite. Because those terms like Iran and all that are not normal terms to the masses of our people.
Right.
And the masses of our people could care less about Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
We have very, very little knowledge of in fact, if you ask somebody where's the Middle East, you would cause an uproar with a lot of
Right.
African American people. So, I feel what you're saying in terms of that gap or that step. And, sometimes you got to look at what I would call your target audience. You know, our people are on a very simple level. And it's just like selling the final call. A common thing I hear from a lot of people, and it makes me wonder, is I can't read.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
to hear that so much, it really kind of spooks me. And and in a way, I believe it's true with a lot of people. You know, we live in a day and age whereby reading isn't a thing most people do.
Right.
Most people are on the internet and computer, and
Right.
you know, we get our knowledge and information from those sources.
Right.
But the reading and studying type thing, bam, you know, we're not really into that. So, and again, that's why I thought too that educating our people as not just our people, but the believers in terms of Islam and who Prophet Muhammad is. I think you would be surprised at some of the believers who don't know anything on that subject.
Believe it or not, I wouldn't be surprised.
They don't know anything of that subject. Because again, with the average African American person in America, they still under the belief that we don't believe in Jesus.
Right.
And they stuck adamantly on that point.
Right.
And you have to spend a lot of time with our people just on that point, trying to convince them that we do love and follow Jesus.
Right.
And stuff. And, but that, I think that's the issues that the minister are dealing with. Those high issues are only for the educated elite. They can understand, they can grasp that. You know, a lot of people, if you told them about, you know, when Iran took the hospital, they wouldn't even know that.
Right.
You know, all they know is we had a war over there.
And see, now you're hitting on where I'm going. Because we don't understand anything about geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do understand is that three-letter word war, right?
Mm-hmm.
We understand that if I enlist in the military, I get them to pay my tuition, right? If I enlist in the military, I get a GI Bill, right? That's the part we understand, because that's the part that's relevant to us. But what we don't know, and why we keep falling victim to that, is because we don't understand where these wars come from. And that's specifically where I was going with this lecture series, because the Honorable Minister Farrakhan said to us in July, when he gave his lecture at Mosque, when he wore the white suit with the green fez, he said that, you know, falsehood is losing everywhere. And so, you know, Satan is about to make this, I'm paraphrasing, but Satan is about to make this big move, right? And so the thing is he's saying that they're provoking a war with Iran, but he said the problem is, or what it comes with you, is that they don't care about black lives until it's time for war. So he said then they care about black and brown bodies, because that's who they need to fight their wars.
That's right.
And so the minister's saying, telling, you know, us and our people, don't get involved in that war. But how can we stop our people from getting involved in the war when they get their tuition paid and they get a check? What information can we invite them to see where they're really not winning from this? Yes, sir.
Now, that's a very good point, because when a lot of these wars
And
started,
poor whites. Just what it
yeah,
said.
when these wars started over there in the Middle East, a lot of these people, which you would call weekend warriors, which was, the National Guard and all that, a lot of these sisters and brothers had enlisted in the National Guards trying to get them benefits,
Right.
and they wound up being deployed to these areas, being sent to these areas. But what I wanted to mention was a strange thing happened with a lot of the sisters and brothers that were coming back from the wars over there in Iraq and stuff. And that is, they found that when they were captured or cornered by the Arabs, they were given an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was that if you could recite anything from the Qur'an, you know, we'll spare your life. You might not get hurt. And we heard that a whole lot from a lot of different soldiers, you know, coming back from that area. That was a part of Islam that these Arabs felt like they had to ask these infidels, because if you had some type of knowledge of their religion or Islam, then that would spare your life.
Yes.
And that was.
Well,
I've never heard that before about American soldiers getting captured over there in the East, and Muslims would ask them to cite or recite any part of the Quran.
Yeah, that was very common.
Yeah, I
Because-
never
I mean,
heard that.
I never heard of it either, but I don't know it. So,
See, if you know your religion, you know, Muslims are not supposed to kill Muslims. They're not supposed to enslave Muslims. In fact, a lot of the African nations became Muslims simply to stay out of slavery. You know, they'll...
No,
Hold on.
I'm talking about Bilal.
Bilal wasn't African. I think he was Ethiopian. But anyway,
He was
That's
Abyssinian.
where I'm trying to get you to, and this is history. Case in point, Mansa Musa, I know you heard of him. History teaches us that when the Arabs would leave, the Africans would go back to their regular little, you know, worship, whatever they were worshiping. See, the Africans, some of them got smart. When they started invading Arabs coming in, they Muslim, and they speak the language, and because they knew that Muslims can't enslave Muslims. Or if you knew your Quran or the history of Prophet Muhammad, you would automatically know that Prophet Muhammad said that, you know, you got to want for your brother what you want for yourself. So if you're Muslim, I can't enslave you. I can't treat you bad.
You can't enslave nobody according to the Quran.
That's not true. That's not true. There's a word in the Quran they use, infidels, and that's people who don't believe in Islam. And that's a different thing. But I just brought that point out to illustrate or to show, because you can do your research. Like the sister said, in this class and in my class, always do your research. Don't go on my words verbatim all the time.
right.
I tell you things so you can go back and study and find out for yourself. And if you go and do your research and find out for yourself, you're going to find out this is true. I'll give you a case in point that this came on the news with. When that big dark-skinned sister got captured, her foot got blown off or something. This was in Iraq. They were in a tank or something like that. But she went to comment on world news. You know, she couldn't hardly walk or anything. But they captured her, and some kind of way they paid her ransom or whatever. Anyway, they let her and a few others go. She did say that they kept on asking her, did she have any knowledge of Islam, and could she recite any Quran? Because if you could, you know, we wouldn't treat you like we're really going to treat the rest of the people. the enemy, you know what I mean? You the enemy to them. But if, and then again too, in the walaikum assalam, sister, how you doing? In the enemy's army, especially nowadays. Oh, great.
I see him. I'm fine. I'm feeling fine.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
He may not even know.
Huh?
I said, you may not even know. I'm sorry.
Ooh, I do know.
You know.
But Papa, you know, hold on that.
Yeah, the brother told me, and I discussed it with him. Cause I said, you know, usually with that, it's a sign of, slow down some. And I brought to his mind about eating. I said, you know, cause you look a little thin, huh? Remember me telling you that?
Yeah.
I said, did they question you about your diet and, you know, about eating? I said, but to help yourself, you should eat a lot and slow down. And that will help. But usually when a man or a woman run into that, for instance, case in point, the cracker, what's his name? Bernie Sanders. He just had a heart attack, right? Yeah, he had a heart attack.
He did.
Okay.
And the biggest thing everybody was saying that is, slow down, Bernie. Now you gotta slow down a little bit. Now, that didn't mean he quit doing what he was doing, but he started just taking it a little bit more easy.
So yes, praise be to Allah for Brother Malik's health.
Yeah.
And his attendance is a testament to his faith, because even after your health situation, you're right back here on time before time.
Yeah.
So, Sister Deborah has arrived with the clicker. So, let's go ahead and get into it, because now I can, you know, really get into my groove, because I was going to stay behind you and look off the thing. But now you're really on something. So, but we were just laying out, kind of assessing where we are as a class and seeing if this information is relevant. Is it a good class? Should we continue to go? Because we already in week 4. And there's a lot more to the story to go. So, yes ma'am, week 4. And so we agreed that this is relevant information, and we was showing a connection to the minister's recent words. Even 2013 is recent, when you've really been working for 64 years. 2013 is very recent. But here we are, moving forward. So let's just recap what we've gone over so far. So week 1, we went over the events from World War I to the establishment of Israel, and we showed how there was a direct connection between the events that happened in World War I, and if those events never happened, we would not be discussing this whole issue. Well, I can't say it's just a plain out issue, but we wouldn't be hearing about Israel in the news because the country didn't even exist before 1948.
That's right.
Yeah.
So week 2 and 3, we went over the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Week 1 was week 2 was a presentation, and then week 3 we showed a video that went over more in detail the events that happened. And they showed us also, because in week 2 we focused more so on the Ottoman Empire, the events that happened on the Muslim front of the war. But the week 3, when we watched the video, it showed you how interest from all over, or the different empires and the different countries that were involved had interest in it as well. And so week 4, where we are today, we're going to go over how America entered World War I, because this is important, because where do we live? America. So far we've talked about the Germans, we talked about the British, the Russians, the French, the Ottomans, the Arabs. What does this have to do with us? Because we live in America. Now we're going to go over how America entered World War I. And the reason I say America for last is because what? America joined the war last. They just slid in there at the end somehow. They had to, even though they're separated by this big ocean, you know, they had to slide into that war somehow. And we're going to see how, yes, it was a world war. And so now we're going to look at how America got into the war. And our second objective is to see who or what was really behind the entire war. And so we're going to deal with America, who was our last outline, and we're going to tie this whole thing up and see how, or who was really the instigator of this whole thing. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. As we take a look at America entering this war, we also need to take a look at the role that the Negro had at that particular time, because it was, you keep talking about America, but at the same token, you know, we wasn't really considered Americans, and we had a very how would you put it, messed up role that we had to play in that war ourselves.
Right.
Because what brother or sister might need to know or remember is that one of the most eager people that wanted to fight in the war was the Negro. Because the Negro felt like this would give me an opportunity to be a man, to show that I'm a man, and I can possibly fight and earn myself some freedom. Because here at home, I'm really not free, like talking about it.
Right.
And the world sees me as what America has painted me as. And that is, I got a tail, and you know, I'm dumb and I'm stupid.
Right.
And I was arguing with somebody about the Negro role in the wars, in the earlier wars, was really cleanup stuff, like, you know, y'all, you know what latrine is, huh? Latrine duties and all that, that's what we basically did. We wasn't allowed to fight. Now that's the important thing. It took congressional approval to allow the Negro to fight. And when that happened, that changed most of America's wars.
Right.
Because here you had an eager group of people who wanted to get into the fight.
Well, what I will say is that for us in the Nation of Islam, which really requires a whole nother congruent history on the timeline, because we know during this time when all this stuff was going on, what was also going on in the Nation of Islam people?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on at the same time this was all going
Nation
on?
of Islam, the most honorable Elijah. World War I,
Yeah, 1914 to 1918.
the nation wasn't up.
The nation wasn't up, but
Master
There's a
Fard
man
Muhammad.
that was going in
Yeah.
and out of the country
Right,
at that time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that, like I said, that almost requires a whole nother analysis separate and off on its own.
And we had a premise whereby we wasn't gonna fight in America's wars.
Right.
In this country's wars. Even though at that time Master Fard Muhammad was just coming in and out. That was something that was circulated too.
Right. And so that's the point that I'm making is that I see where you're going and this all ties in, but that even requires its own separate presentation, its own separate series. And not saying that we're not gonna do it, but what I'm looking at right now is from more of a global perspective.
Cause I'm doing this for the students today in America because a lot of times us black folks always be trying to see, where do I fit in that?
Right.
You know, where me at? If
Right.
you can't show me in that, then that's not relevant to me.
Right.
That's not pertinent to me.
Right.
I don't hear about no Abraham Lincoln and, you know, he chopped down the cherry tree and all that crazy stuff, cause that doesn't have, well, I mean, George Washington. I'm sorry, George Washington.
I'm not even,
But I'm just saying,
Well,
I'm
this
just speaking fast, because I just wanted to show the point of being relevant to,
right, you
the
want
black
to see
man and
yourself
woman.
in the curriculum.
Right.
I'm getting there, and that's the thing is that in order to really lay out the facts, it takes a little bit of patience on your behalf, and that's why I asked the question in the beginning. Do you see this as relevant? Because it's going to get us up, we're going to get, and that's going to be more so, like she said, that specifically at this time, there was no Nation of Islam officially, right? We had our founder, he was making moves, he was putting things in place, but you know, it hadn't been made manifest yet. So, and one person I do recommend is Brother Wesley. He does an excellent job, because I tried to research Master Fard Muhammad. Without access to some of the information that he has, I really can't even tell you.
now, I think at this time too, you had the, Marcus Garvey movement
Yep,
going on.
we talked about that in 1914.
Right.
His movement began at that time as well. And
Right.
that is his, the Uncle Minister Spartan, his mother and father were part of that movement.
Part of that movement.
Yeah.
And the minister always tells how he looked up on the wall and saw a picture of Marcus Garvey, but I digress because we strapped in again, I've been taking critique, and I've been told that I give a lot of information, right? And so I'm going to strive to, you know, make it through here without losing anybody, but if the time comes amongst you, I might just put a pin in it, right? And then just pick it up later. But I know that we have believe it's National Business Meetings probably going to be next. Okay, so that's what I'll do. We've been about talking, but.
Yeah, another Wednesday, cause
Yeah, I think
the
we
first
have
is
one.
Friday, not this Friday, but next
Okay,
Friday.
good. And that's kind of what was in the back of my mind. But, yes, so that's what I'll try to do. If time comes amongst us, instead of just trying to hurry up and cram it in there, I'm just gonna put a pin in it, and then inshallah I can come back next week. Okay. Ooh. So,
I knew that.
I know, right? But that's because brother Thomas also brought it up last time when we spoke about it. So what is the going story of why America entered World War I? What is the story that everybody knows, that everybody learned in school?
Ooh.
You!
The Holocaust.
World War I.
You said, what was the?
Well, that might be what people say in public school, but
you said, what was the
what was the story on the official story why America entered into World War I? The Holocaust was World War II.
Two, okay, you're right, World War I.
You're the one who said it last time.
They entered.
World War I was from the period of 1914 to 1918. Well, we know in this class that's what it was. What do the masses of our people believe that was the impetus for America entering World War I? Sister Deborah?
There was a false flag attack on a ship called the Lusitania.
Ding, 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 ding. And what I will say is that it's false flag on one hand, if you really think who was really behind it all, but more nuanced than just a false flag is that it was a provocation, right? They let it happen.
But that's the whole thing about a false flag.
Well, the false flag
is designed because 9/11 is considered a false flag, a pretense of provocation.
But a false flag is usually when, you know, an entity attacks themselves and then say it was somebody else, which was more 9/11. But this, as we will see, it was really the different forces that attacked each other, but it was kind of, they wanted it to happen. So it's like, you know, if you know, say for instance that there's like a guillotine coming down, and so, you know, you put your hand under it, and then when your fingers get chopped off, then you're like, oh, the guillotine did it. No, you know, your elevator didn't really go all the way to the top. And kind of the same thing with Pearl Harbor, like the minister explains to us, is that they had already decoded the message, right? And they knew that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor. They could have avoided it if they wanted to, but they had let it happen because it went along with the narrative that they want to play out. Okay?
But I thought that was the beginning of World War II.
It was. That was. I was just giving an example of the different types of incentives, right? Yeah, the different types of scenarios. And the reason that I mentioned that is because upon just looking up the information, I just learned that myself because I was under the same impression. But this information, so in 1915 is when this took place. So on May 7th, 1915, less than a year after World War I broke out, across Europe, a German U-boat torpedoed and sank the RMS Lusitania, which was a British ocean liner en route from New York to Liverpool, England. One of the more 1,900 passengers and crew members on board, more than 1,100 parents, including more than 100 training families. That's the story we're told, right? That's what everybody knows. We entered into America, not we, but America entered World War I because of the sinking of this ship, right? There were Americans on that ship. We have to, you know, we have to advance our citizens, right? And it says, but check this out. That happened in 1915. But it wasn't until 2 years later that the United States would formally enter into World War I. Isn't that interesting? If everybody believes that it was the sinking of this ship that caused us to get into the war, why didn't we get into it until 2 years later? Question. So it says, nearly 2 years were passed before the United States formally entered World War I, but the sinking of the Lusitania played a significant role in what? Read the red print, please, somebody.
Turning public opinion against Germany, both in the United States and abroad.
Bam. Right? So, why was it necessary to turn the American opinion? Right? If the Germans were so bad, we should have been jumping to get into the war, right? We were just ready and hungry to do this. Why was that the case? Well, let's look at the prelude to the Lusitania. So it says, when World War I erupted in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson pledged what?
Neutrality.
Neutrality for the United States. A position that what?
The vast majority of Americans favor.
So, as we can see, that the Americans did not want to be in this war in the first place. And so, if you have a country, right, or the powers that be of a country that wants the country to be in a war, but guess what? Who's going to fight that war as we establish? It's going to be the poor of that country, right? If you live in a mansion, if you're the president of the United States, if you're the upper crust, you're not fighting a war, right? We're going to get those poverty people, you know, they don't contribute anything to society. They just eat up all our food.
You know your children.
Right. And so they need to convince the lower classes of the people that they need to get into a war. So they set up a scenario to play on the people's emotions. So it says Britain, however, was one of America's closest what? Trading partners. Right. So the connection between Britain and America was trading, or we're talking about what? Economics, financial. We're talking about money. So it was because Britain and America were close business partners that Britain needed America to enter this war. But again, the president had already told his people, I told the people that elected me that we're not going to fight any wars, but my friend wants me to fight a war. So now I have to convince the people that elected me that as a country, we need to go to war, because why? They will be fighting it for me. So it says, tension soon arose between the United States and Germany over the latter's attempted quarantine of the British Isles. Several U.S. ships traveling to Britain were damaged or sunk by German mines, and in February 1915, Germany announced unrestricted submarine warfare in the waters around Britain. So, this is what we all know, right? But here's an interesting tidbit that even shocked me. Look at this. It said in early May 1915, what? Several New York newspapers published a warning by the German embassy in Washington, D.C. that Americans traveling on British or Allied ships in war zones did so at their own risk. This is a clipping from one of the newspapers that told the people, Americans, that if you get on this ship, you are going into war zone or war zone waters. So you're risking, this is the height of the war, and they told you. So look at this, read this notice. It says, on this side is a warning, right? But guess what's on this side? This is the warning is over here, and here's the advertisement to book your passes on the ship. Isn't that crazy? It's just like with the cigarettes, how they say, you know, this product will cause cancer, right? The Surgeon General says that, you know, I'm just paraphrasing, 100% cancer risk, but then on the other side of, you know, they have people with perfectly white teeth, good skin, you know, on the cigarette box. It's the same thing. So they're on one hand, they're advertising the boat and get on the ship, and on the other, they say warning. So let's read this. It says, travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic voyage are reminded that a state of war exists between Germany and her allies and Great Britain and her allies, that the zone of war includes the waters adjacent to the British Isles, that in accordance with formal notice given by the Imperial German government, vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters, and travelers sailing on the war zone on ships of Great Britain or her allies do at their own risk. Imperial German Embassy. On this side, it says, fastest and largest steamer now in the Atlantic. Service said you can book the flight on Saturday, Friday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So they told the people, don't go. This is like putting your fingers under the guillotine. And then when it drops, you're saying, oh, you cut my finger off. I told you don't do it, right? And so it says, it's just more information. It says, the announcement was placed on the same page as the advertisement of the imminent sailing of the Lusitania liner from New York back to Liverpool. It says, the sinking of merchant ships off the south coast of Ireland prompted the British Admiralty to warn the Lusitania to avoid the area or take simple evasive actions such as zigzagging to confuse U-boats plotting the vessel's course. So this is telling you that they knew far in advance and very well that going over there would be dangerous. But we know, as we say, the rest is history. And now we get to the Lusitania sinking. So it says the captain of the Lusitania, what?
Admiralty recommendation.
Don't go over there. Oh, we're going to do it anyway. And at 2:12 p.m. on May 7th, the 32,000-ton ship was hit by an exploded torpedo on the starboard side. It was revealed that what? The Lusitania was carrying about 173 tons of war munitions for Britain.
Yeah.
This is an advertisement for civilians to take a cruise, right? To go to Europe from America. But in actuality, they were smuggling weapons for Germany's enemies, which are the British. Okay? So, again, the Germans told them don't do it. They did it anyway, and even ignored the British warning. And with all that being said, they were caught red-handed. They were smuggling weapons. But somehow, the Germans are the bad guys, right? That's what the popular story is. So it said it was revealed that the Lusitania was carrying about 173 tons of war munitions to Britain, which the Germans cited as further justification for the attack. So it's like, see, we attacked you, one, because you didn't listen to our warning, but two, we attacked you because you were carrying weapons and we already knew. You're not sneaky. So it says the United States eventually protested the actions and Germany apologized and pledged to end unrestricted submarine warfare. However, in November of the same year, a U-boat sunk an Italian liner without warning, killing more than 270 people, including more than 25 Americans. Why are these Americans always on these ships that they're not supposed to be on?
Yeah.
Something doesn't make sense, right? So it says what in red?
Public opinion against the United States began to turn irrevocably against Germany.
So now you see how all of this staged happenings that seem totally organic are now doing what you needed to do in order to get into the war. Now people are like, those Germans are evil because they are set out to kill Americans. All the while, the real culprit is the person who was piloting the ship who shouldn't have gone there anyway, right? So this is the story that we're told, and that's totally debunked when the truth came out.
What, just go back if you would.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that would really make it incendiary, because if they're carrying munitions on it, and they knew that they were going to attack, it was actually a bomb. It was
Right. I took that out because I thought that was I took it out because it's like, okay, we understand what blow up means, but basically, go ahead and say what you were saying.
Well, I'm just saying that it sunk in 37 minutes. How do you have an ocean liner that sink in 37 minutes? Ocean liners are designed to be able to take a hit, and they actually make it. That's what I wanted to put in there, the Vanderbilts. That's what I was going to.
Tomorrow right here?
No, I was going, they said 37 minutes.
You said 15.
15 minutes, but I was gonna put in there the Vanderbilts while there. And so, you're talking about, in news, they say that there are certain things that make news. Large numbers of people that get, something happens to. that makes the news, newsworthy. Names that are notariable, that makes
Notorious.
things notariable. People just knowing about them.
Yeah.
And of course, proximity, where you are, whatnot. So I'm looking at the headline as you were speaking in New York Times. You had 1,000 people that were killed. See, those numbers are significant because you can't have too few and you can't have too many because people won't accept it, but then they throw in that name. That is a contrived headline in order, in the New York Times, in order to, that's propaganda.
Right.
Right there, that is all designed for the purpose of getting the American citizens, primed to go into war.
You get what she's saying?
Yeah.
Like, with some, we only care about the news because of celebrities anyway.
Yeah.
Like, why, people get divorced every day, but, you and I's divorces don't make headlines, and when we're trying to check out in the grocery store, we have to see it all over, all over the paper.
Yes, and also with Germany, one of their most prized and potent war machines that they had was the U-boats. Because these submarines could travel and go places and you don't know where they're at. And the Germans had the advantage at that particular time because they had more boats and they had that technology whereby they could track and follow these ocean liners or whatever, and they could sink them.
Right.
It went from the ocean liners to American warships and stuff. And there were, stories told about how the men would drown and all the sharks would eat them up. It wasn't so much the sinking of the boat, it was the sharks. They said they would eat up and kill up so many men before help would come to rescue those in the sea.
And again, you see how that, when you hear, innocent people are traveling and then they get attacked and then before they can even get help. So it's just all drumming up that because we need the public opinion before we can get into this war. And the same public that elected me on neutrality will not stand for it. So I have to give them the impetus to make them think that they want to go to war on their own.
Yeah.
Right, because then as well as now, America has never had a stomach for war in terms of casualties and loss. Whenever they start getting casualties and loss, America hastens to try to come out of that particular war because the people just can't stand to see boxes coming back from these particular places of Americans.
Right.
So it was always a hard job to sell a war to the masses of people because the people really wasn't into taking on the challenge of all those people dying.
Right. And we see the effects even today with the veterans that's coming back with PTSD and prosthetic limbs. So, a little bit more. So again, that was in 1950. So now, 2 years later, on January 31st, 1917, Germany, determined to win its war of attrition against the Allies, announced that it would resume unrestricted warfare in war zone waters. 3 days later, the United States broke diplomatic relations with Germany, and just hours after the American ship Housatonic was sunk by a German U-boat. So again, we still have more ships that are going down. The Lusitania wasn't the only ship, but that's the only name you remember, right?
Right.
It's that dramatic play in history. So on February 22nd, Congress passed a what? $250 million arms appropriation bill intended to make the United States ready for war. Where did that money come from?
They make it.
You are on it, you don't know how deep that is.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, and that's what we're going to get to later. We're going to understand this whole thing about banking and how it works. But exactly, somebody just made it up and said, here you go. You see what I'm saying? They not passing $250 million bills for education, health care, housing, but they going to pass a $250 million appropriation bill for arms. Because why? You need to get in that war, right? Now we're starting to see a trend. So in late March, Germany sunk 4 more U.S. merchant ships, and on April 2nd, President Wilson appeared before Congress and called for a declaration of war against Germany. And on April 4th, the Senate voted to declare war against Germany. And 2 days later, the House of Representatives endorsed the declaration. With that, America entered into World War I. So now we've had the impetus, right? They have to attack us first for us to get into there. And as soon as we feel like we're ready to get in the war, it comes along. You know, if you're gonna go in the war, you need to make sure you have the best weapons.
Yeah.
So where you gonna get that money from? We'll give it to you, right? Because we believe that you'll win. So now that same year, we are back to this. Remember I said we was gonna deal with this Balfour Declaration and some of but this is really the pendulum that swings everything. So again, just to reiterate, the Balfour Declaration in that same year, on November 2nd, 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour sent a letter to Lionel Rothschild, scion of the Rothschild family, a prominent Zionist, and a friend of Chaim Weizmann, in which he expressed the British government's support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Now, let's clear some words, because when we talk about misunderstood words sometimes, how they can get us confused. Scion, I looked that word up because, that's the brand of my car. So I knew it wasn't talking about a car. This word scion means the descendant of a wealthy person, right? So if you come from a wealthy family, they call you a scion, right? Or a wealthy or noble family, right? If your parents are noble or nobility and stuff like that, kings and queens, you're descendant, you're a scion. And so he's the descendant of a wealthy family, which is the Rothschilds family. And a prominent Zionist. So Arthur Balfour was a Zionist, right? This person who descended from a rich family was indeed a Zionist and a friend of Chaim Weizmann. Who is Chaim Weizmann? He later became the first president of Israel. Check that out.
You sure?
Yes, I looked it up.
It should have been start with a G.
I know who you're talking about. I put him on another one. I don't think he was considered the president. It was another title that he was. But Chaim Weizmann later became the first president of Israel.
Became first president because the other guy
I know his name because I had him. It's gonna come to me.
It starts with a G.
It's gonna come to me because that was a lot of names. So this man who he sent this Arthur Balfour, he sent the letter to this man, Lionel Walter Rothschild, who came from a rich family, was a Zionist, and he was friends with somebody who later became president of Israel. You seeing how this stuff started to come together? And it says, so one of the various motives behind the decision was that Britain's leaders hoped that a formal declaration in favor of Zionism would help gain Jewish support for the Allies in neutral countries. In the United States, and especially in Russia, where the anti-Semitic Tsar's government had just been overthrown with the help of Russia's Jewish population. Let me break this down for you. So out of the motive in his thinking is that if I somehow supported the Zionists, right? Support for Zionism in his mind equal winning the war. What makes the Zionists so powerful? What was so powerful about, as they say, world Jewry, or the Jewish people in the world that was so powerful? What was it about flipping the Jews in different countries around the world to his side that in his mind, he thought that if he would show them favoritism, he would win the war? What was it about him? Anybody?
What was the question again?
What is it in his mind, in Arthur Balfour's mind, that he thought that if he showed favoritism to the Jews, that he would win the war? What's the connection between?
That he would win the war?
Yeah, this is the British. He's the British Foreign Secretary.
Because they were the elites, and they had the money, and they had the notoriety at the time. And he felt as though he can get this, doing what he was doing, would bring all Jews that are in control.
You said the question.
Why do you think that Arthur Balfour, in his mind, connected favoritism or being favored by the Jews with winning the war?
Okay, so
You need that money.
you raise your hand?
No, I just pointed at the rain.
Okay.
The
Well,
wars are expensive.
I was trying to play back in my mind on the timeline, because I know I missed some of this. But going back to the Civil War, and I moved forward, well, with Abraham Lincoln, they had the Jews, the World Bank was squeezing him, and he did not want to borrow money from them. So they decided to print, because it says in the Constitution, Congress shall print all money. And so when he had printed something called greenbacks, and so that way they can fund their own war as opposed to borrowing from an outside entity. 1914, the Federal Reserve was 13, the Federal Reserve Act was signed by Woodrow Wilson, and everybody was
Okay.
Well,
I just want you to get to the point because you're still in my thunder.
okay, well, I was making a connection.
I mean, that's where we're going, but I
Okay,
just want
well-
the simple answer. Like, I think one of those
Okay,
things.
well, the
It's a
simple
natural
answer is that, the Rothschild's family was funding the conflicts all over the world because the world banks were in there, one in London, one in France. You want me to stop?
No. I was
One in
understanding.
France,
I'm sorry.
one in
I'm gonna
Germany.
write it. I'm gonna write the
We
question.
hadn't talked about this.
Because I'm gonna write the question because I need the question to stay because then I'm gonna show the connection to the question.
They had one in Germany, they had one in America, and, Germany, America, France, London. Okay, I think that's all fine. So, what was happening is that the Jews had a plan for world domination. And so they wanted to enact or wanted to get a one world government. And so what they did is that they had their money changers all over place, that strategically placed all over the world.
You still my thunder.
Okay,
I just
well,
want the simple answer to this because they have my
okay.
And that's also where they got the minister in trouble with the Zionists, in the sense that he showed that they financed the slave trade.
Yeah.
No, he was in trouble before that.
Well, big trouble. Because this they didn't want out. They, because they were the architects of the civil rights and all this and that, and they had people fooled.
So, now, the question is out there. In the second half of this presentation, we're going to deal with this whole issue of why the Jews were so instrumental into changing the tides of this war. Because remember, in the previous weeks, we talked about how at this point, the Allies were losing. The Ottomans had whooped them at the Battle of Gallipoli, right? And the Germans was holding off the British and the Russians. They was fighting the war on two sides and was whipping them off, right? So
Right.
they needed, that push to win.
When Hitler,
And one of the ways that they were able to win is because America got in the war. So what brought America into the war? And then all this wrapped up in this declaration because as you see, it says that Jewish support for the Allies in the United States and in Russia.
I want to make a comment right quick if I can. On one of the slides, a couple of ones back, you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back. It said that Germany was an ally of the United States. And so, in order for them to go from friend to foe, it took time to turn the tides on the Germans, So, yeah, I just want to say that they were allies.
Absolutely. And then Sister Deborah, in her own right, she can tell you how America got their education system from the Germans.
And I also had brought up a fact that the Germans also borrowed from America that racism thing, this thing that the Germans started doing with the
Eugenics.
But this,
because I don't, there's a difference between, for instance, the word Nazi. To be a Nazi or to be in the Nazi party, you got to prove your lily whiteness, and they got to do it. Yeah, hold on, it's not funny because
you said lily whiteness?
that's what I said, because they had to go through a bloodline check and all this, that, and the other to make sure you were pure white. And it was a difference from being a Nazi than a regular German. Because a regular German, you just born and raised in the country and you might be something else.
Absolutely.
But a Nazi was different. A Nazi was, that's why they had special insignias and stuff. That's why they were the upper class of the German army and stuff.
Right.
Because they were proven lily white.
Well, they were proven lily green because their money
Yeah.
we don't see.
Also, I didn't go that far. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't get there. But this is the question that's out there, and we're going to seek to answer this question. So, again, we saying that, this word Zionist, and we're going to deal with this family of the Rothschild, because we have to understand those two in order to understand what this is all about. So now, Zionism. Zionism is a religious and political effort that brought thousands of Jews from around the world back to their ancient homeland in the Middle East and reestablished Israel as the central location for Jewish identity. Simply put, Zionism is the push for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, right? But check this out. The father of modern Zionism, it says modern Zionism was officially established as a political organization by this man named Theodor Herzl in 1897. I mean, 1897. And the reason I got it switched up in my mind, because that's a special date, right? But it says he was a Jewish journalist and a political activism from where? Austria. So the father, right, of Zionism was from Austria. Austria, you remember in this, who were the Central Powers and who were the Allied Powers, right? Austria was on the side that Germany was on, and against the British.
Yeah.
But here, this man, Arthur Balfour, is asking a British Jew who's a Zionist, and he's following a movement that an Austrian Jew made. That, I don't think you get it. Let's write it. Okay. Who were the quiz? Who were the Allied powers? Britain. Britain.
I know the Ottomans were on the other side.
Okay.
Russia.
And the Otto. No. Yep. Russia.
The Germans on the
Russia. Germany. France. Okay, that's good enough for right now as far as the Allied powers. So on this side, you had Ottoman Empire, the German Empire. There was one more.
German.
Iran.
No. It was the Austro. Yep. Austro-Hungary.
Hungary.
Right? So, the father of Zionism was Austria. Okay. So the father of Zionism was from Austria, right? At that time, it was the Austro-Hungary Empire. But the man who they're asking for help from right here is from Britain.
Most times, like Muhammad said, their brothers are going under the Jews and Christians.
So he's asking a British Jew who follows an Austrian Jew for support. Right? So you see that the Jews do not have any loyalty to any state or any nation state. They have loyalty to the Jews, right? And we're going to look at this even further, and this will help us explain how they operate in looking at this family. So that is Zionism, right? Which is who this person right here follows. That's the movement. The person he's pro-Jewish homeland. They asking money for it. Now we get to the Rothschild family. This man, Lionel Walter Rothschild, he's from this family. So who are the Rothschilds? What is this family about? And so the Rothschild family is the most famous of all European banking dynasties. Now you see why they're interested in this man, Lionel Rothschild, because he comes from a long line of bankers. And it says, which for some 200 years exerted great influence on the economic and indirectly the political history of Europe. So what they're saying is there's a connection between big money and politics. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Barack Obama, what was his first term? His campaign was like so big that he had his campaign cost like more than the next 3 people combined or something like that, right? So politicians answer to who has the money. Woodrow Wilson. So it says the house was founded by Mayer Amschel Rothschild and his 5 sons, Amschel Mayer, Salvador Mayer, Nathan Mayer, Carl Mayer, and Jacob or James Mayer. Here are his 5 sons. But this is what's interesting. This is where things get interesting. It says starting out in the Frankfurt banking house. Question: does anybody know where Frankfurt is? Germany. Yeah. So this family that are here now in 1914 started out in where? Germany. Yeah. So they're Germans, but now they live somewhere else. It says starting out in Frankfurt banking house. Oh yeah, oh absolutely. But starting out at Frankfurt banking house, Mayer and his sons became international bankers, establishing branches in London, Paris, Vienna. What's Vienna?
Yeah.
The Italians were on this side.
And Naples also.
And in Naples, right?
Vienna, Austria.
Vienna, I think Vienna's in Italy.
I think
Naples
it's
is in
Austria.
Italy.
I think it's Austria.
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Look that up, please, because this is important.
And Naples is in Italy.
Okay, we're gonna add Italy for this thing.
Italy also was an ally of Germany.
We're gonna add Italy because during World War I, Italy was on the Allied side. Look up Vienna. So we have this family in Britain. We have them in France, Italy, Germany.
Yes,
Austria and Austria.
No.
So this family, which are originally from Germany, they have been for 200 years plus, they've been running Europe, but not from one place, but from many places. So now you fast forward, you have this family on both sides of the war.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when America wanted to call that loan, they have to go to the banks, right?
Yeah.
And the banks are really run by this family. So they established banks in all these countries, and eventually what they did is that they rose up to power and they took over the central banks of those countries. And the power of the central bank is that bank is in charge of printing and manufacturing the currency of that country. I.e., if you want to buy something, you have to have the currency of that country, right? When you travel to other countries, first thing you do when you get off the plane is you go exchange your money. Because the money over there, the money that you have here doesn't work somewhere else, right? It's almost like a key. The key might work in your door, but it don't work everywhere else. And so now, starting out with Germany, they went to all the major countries in Europe, and guess what? Any war that the powers wanted to have, they had to go to the bank to get the money because the people in power didn't want to tax the low class people, the lay people. Why? Because the lay people elected them. And if they don't serve the wishes of the lay people will kick them out of office and they'll put somebody else in it. So, since they don't want to get the money from you, they will get the money from somebody else. And really, it still is you who have to pay. So, let's look at how this family operates. They started out in Germany, they went to other countries, and eventually took over the banking of that entire country. So here's a quote from Mayor Amschel Rothschild, who is the founder of this family. He says, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." This is the motto of this family. Check this out. Baron Nathan Mayer Rothschild, he said, "I care not what a puppet is placed on the throne of England. I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire which the sun never sets. The man that controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the money supply." So mathematically, who controls the British Empire?
The Rothschild.
Yes. And when the British were losing the fight, who did they go to? The Rothschild. Because just like their father taught them, he's practicing the same tradition that his father taught them, is don't worry who's in charge. As long as you have control of the money, you have control over them. I'm not going to get into the details of fractional reserve banking because that's going to be next. But this is how they understood this, and that was their plan. And so by this time in 1914, they had become known. Why was anti-Semitism rampant in Europe? Because people had been figuring out that these people were behind the scenes, bankrupting their countries and throwing, their countries into disarray. So they wanted these people out, right? And so basically all the Europeans hated them. And so when people start to find out who they are, now we want to have a land of our own. Because people, are attacking us. Yes, ma'am.
If you can go back to the previous slide, if you look at Mayor Amschel Rothschild, you look at him real close, you will see that he has very ethnic features, large dark eyes, curly hair. And go forward one, and that son right there, same thing. He looks like he could be one of my children. No, I'm serious. I've always noticed this about them, and of course they're supposed to be Semites, but I have some questions about their lineage.
Oh, that was it? Well, so this is how this family had been able to rule, in Europe, and rule the banking industry in Europe for 200 years, because they practiced this type of principle of gaining control of a nation's money supply, and thereby putting the leader of their country in a chokehold, right? So, what did they do in America? What does America have to do with it? This is the same thing that they did in America the year before the war started. Because at that point, America wasn't, connected to the banking interests. America, they didn't have a central bank. But 1 year before the war, America slid in and had their central bank established under the name of the Federal Reserve. But you want to know something about the Federal Reserve, which is America's central bank? It's not federal. Meaning that it's not owned by the government.
It's private.
The Federal Reserve is owned by private banking companies. When I say private, that means that somebody who's not involved with America's policy owns America's money.
Well, the World Bank, it had become so powerful that, as you said, that people started to see the connection between the banking families. And so they had to break up the banks. And so they put them under different names, like the Central Bank of London. That's one of the Rothschild's banks. But all of the banks sit outside of the country itself. The one in Rome, it sits outside the country, just like Washington, D.C. is not part of the United States, it's a District of Columbia, same way with Central London.
Mhm.
And so they are actually banking, I'm not gonna go into all of that, but Woodrow Wilson was married to, or his wife was related to, I think, the Rockefellers. And so they're one of the patsies of the Rothschilds, so he was, really, in order to get to be president, they maneuvered him into the presidency, so he owed them.
Right.
And so that's what the Federal Reserve, that's how it got created, because he owed them.
So, I'll say it like this, it is 9 o'clock, but I promise you, there's like a few more slides, like we are at the end.
Yeah.
And do you all feel overloaded, do we need to take a break?
Just go.
Okay, okay, so, what does America have to do with this Rothschilds family? Like Sister Deborah said, in Europe, people had begun to figure out their scheme and started to route them out, right? So, they got wise and they started to learn to change the names of their business, don't put their name on it. Another thing, that's what they did, is they tried to convince people that they were not as rich as they were. But in reality, they just, broke up their dynasty in different pieces and just changed people's names. That's the same thing they did when they took on, different European names. They just changed their name. That's one of the ways that they do it. Just like the family that was from Germany, they went to different countries in Europe and just assimilated into that society. So, that's the thing with this Federal Reserve Bank. So it's going to be hard to spot the Rothschilds' influence, right? Because they're in the name changing business, right? They just work around it because they don't want people to figure out who they are. So just look at this, it's interesting. So the Federal Reserve Act was passed by the 63rd United States Congress and signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson on December 23rd, 1913. The law created the Federal Reserve System, the central bank system of the United States. Interesting enough, the year right before the war, and during the war, he had promised the people to stay neutral. So you see the quagmire that's going on here, because that's how this family got rich, off of taking over central banks and financing wars against two people, and whoever wins, whoever loses has to pay back all the money, right? Well, with him, he just got elected, so he had to figure work around that, and that's why we had all the drama with the Lusitania. But look at this. It says at the end of November 10, Senator Nelson W. Aldrich and Assistant Secretary of the United States Treasury Department A. Pyatt Andrew, and 5 countries' leading financiers, Frank Vanderlip, Henry P. Davidson, Benjamin Strong, and Paul Warburg, arrived at the Jekyll Island Club to conduct a secret meeting to plan a country's monetary policy and banking system, formulating during the meeting the Federal Reserve as America's next central bank. Now, where's the Rothschilds, you ask? Well, this man right here, Paul Warburg. So the Darryl is an expert at calling out Jews when he sees them, right? Warburg is a Jewish name, right?
Absolutely.
So, let's look a little bit about this man's Paul Warburg. Paul Warburg, who was born Paul Moritz Warburg, was an American investment banker born where?
Germany.
He was an American banker, but he was born in Germany, the same place that the Rothschilds are from.
Look at him. He's another one that looks like, that's where he goes first. I'm telling these people there's something in them that they're.
So, Paul Warburg is a German Jew, but he's in control of America's banking system. And an early advocate of the U.S. Federal Reserve System, Warburg was born in Hamburg, Germany, to the Warburg family, a Jewish banking dynasty with origins in Venice. Now, Venice, I know that's
in Italy.
Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we got Jews all over the place, right?
Yeah.
It says, although major factor in German finance, after frequent business trips to New York, Warburg settled there in 1902 as a partner in Kuhn Leaving Company, where influential Jacob Schiff, his brother's father-in-law, was a senior partner. So after going back and forth to New York, he decided to move from Germany to New York and work at his brother's father-in-law's business. Jacob Schiff. This is whose companies he's working at, right? Who is Jacob Schiff? Follow me on this. Jacob Henry Schiff, who was really born Jacob Heinrich Schiff, was an American banker, businessman, and philanthropist. Born in Frankfurt, where? Germany. Schiff migrated to the United States after the American Civil War and joined the firm Kuhn Leading Company. From his base on Wall Street, a Jew who has a base on where? Wall Street. From his base on Wall Street, he was the foremost Jewish leader from 1880 to 1920 in what later became known as the Schiff era, grappling with all major Jewish issues and problems of the day, including the plight of Russian Jews under the Tsar, American and international anti-Semitism, care of needy Jewish immigrants, and the rise of Zionism. So now you have German Jews running America's banking system who are also Zionists. Why did Arthur Balfour think that support of Zionism would win the war? Money.
Yeah.
It says Schiff was born in 1847 in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, to Moses and Clara Schiff, members of the distinguished Ashkenazi Jewish rabbinical family that traced its lineage in Frankfurt back to 1370. His father, Moses Schiff, was a broker for the Rothschilds. Didn't take long. Where was the Rothschilds in all this? Who did Arthur Balfour write the letter to? Dear Lord Rothschild. And that's a double entendre. But dear Lord Rothschild, what is that? Right there. Dear Lord Rothschild. Why is he writing a letter to the Rothschild? Because they run Wall Street. In America, right?
Yeah.
Right before the war, they took over America's banking system. So if British want the Americans to get in the war, they go to the bankers who were Zionists, right? But the same British Zionist Jew is the brother of the American Zionist Jew, who's the brother of the German Zionist Jew, the Austrian Zionist Jew, the French Zionist. The Jews have infiltrated all of the major players in countries in the world. And they've taken over those countries' central banks. And so now, what did he say? Let me issue and control the money, nation's money, and I don't care who write the laws. They don't care about America. They don't care about Britain, Russia, France, and so on and so forth. They trying to get their money. So now we found the Rothschilds. But here's the thing. The minister said he stumbled, upon his mission, and now is to take down Satan, right? And he said he's here to separate the good Jews from the bad Jews. And how did he run into that problem? Is because he was backing, what's his name? Jesse Jackson for president, right? But if he backed Jesse Jackson for president, who was a candidate that the Jews didn't like, right? They didn't want him to be the president because they didn't have their control over him. Because as long as they control the money, they can control the presidents. They've been doing this for 200 plus years, so this is their game. So if you're getting in the way of our financial gains, which on its face, we maneuver politicians, we have a problem now. But what I want you to do is pay attention to this little symbol over here. Now, you see this red shield looking thing? That's actually what the name Rothschild translates to. It's the German name for red shield. Rothschild means red shield in German. And that was the symbol that was on the front door of Mayor Amschel Rothschild's business. He had a red shield on it that had a six-pointed star. Look at the Rothschild shield, right? And you see this 6-pointed star?
Yeah.
This is the flag of Israel. And these people were the same people that funded this country. Okay? And even in Israel, there's a Rothschild Street. Did you know that?
Mhm.
They have streets in Israel named after the Rothschilds. So this thing, you see how this thing goes way back?
Way back.
Way back. We're not even ready. But check this out. It says, I know thy works in tribulations and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of those that say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Last time we were here, didn't we show that the point of Zionism was to import European Jews, right? That are not Semitic, but are converts to Judaism. So here you have a group of people that are going around saying that they are Jews, but they're really not. Here, when you're looking at these people, you are looking in the face of Satan himself. And this is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's mission, right? So when he tells us to go places and he tells us to stay away from places, he's giving us battle orders to fight Satan. But we don't get that, right? We just don't get it. It says, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. This is the minister's mission, is to do battle with Satan. We say God is a man, right? If God is a man and Satan is his opponent, that means Satan is a man too.
Yeah.
And he's walking around somewhere on this earth. I can't say for sure that the Rothschilds are where they lie, but I'm pretty sure they're very close to it, because they are following in line. There were many quotes, but we're going to get to that next week. We're going to get further into it. And here's another thing that I found interesting. The mark of the beast. Check this out. It says that he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save that he hath the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So when we're talking about the beast, the mark of the beast, where you cannot buy or sell,
Economic sanctions.
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Control of the central bank, right? If you don't use dollars and government issued bonds, you cannot buy or sell in America, right? If you cannot use the currency of a country, you cannot purchase anything, any goods. And if you purchase or sell any goods that are outside of their control, you commit a felony, right? So when we're talking about the mark of the beast and not being able to buy or sell this, we're talking about control of the banking system. This is the beast. This is Satan that we're talking about. Here are some organizations. You know, you see the UN, you have the ADL, these are different marks of the beast. So it's not just one mark, but it's their ability for global hegemony, as they say. That you can't do anything unless it comes through them. And here's just some interesting pictures. I had this one up last time. And when I did Making of Devil in the last 6,000 years. But check this out. This is the American dollar bill. Right? And if you connect the points on this, you get the Jewish star. Right?
Yeah.
So, and this is on your dollars. So that mark of the beast is encoded in your dollars, which you use to buy and sell.
Mm-hmm.
And we already discussed how that is a Jewish controlled entity, right? But this is another thing. This is a barcode. Everything that you purchase has one of these on it. This is for the tech nerds. But here, they coded these bars to represent numbers. And so with every barcode, they have these same numbers, and every one of them, everything in between is different. But each of these barcodes represent in this code 6. Because here's the number for this barcode, and as you can see, 6 is these 2 parallel lines right here, but these are the same parallel lines that on every barcode that's on the outside in the middle. So in every barcode, something that is on everything that you purchase and sell is the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is control of the money system. And so to wrap it up, we talked about this already. Balfour Declaration, if there was no Balfour Declaration, there would be no state of Israel. But right after World War I, when they made all the double deals and the reneging on deals with the Arabs were not having it. So they had to rehash the plan and then find a way to get people to support Zionism. And how did they do that? It was the Zionists themselves that manufactured the Nazi movement. Because as we see, the Zionists originated where? Germany. So the Zionists themselves came from Germany. But guess what? They don't have loyalty to Germany because they just stand there. They're international. So they came up with the the Nazi movement to get their ends, just like the Lusitania was a false flag of sorts. The same thing with the Holocaust. This is all to achieve their ends, and there's nothing that they wouldn't do to remain in power.
Very good.
So, you know what the review is? If there are any questions or comments, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to greet you as a hand for you with reading words of peace.
Supreme wisdom, some call it the lessons, but I call it life, actual facts, no guessing.